So that should be starting here momentarily. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead now and get everyone checked in. So basically what I'm going to do is go through each one of my squares here, ask you what your name is, and if it is on the screen, if it's spelled correctly, and then who you're representing here today, whether you are the applicant, the owner, a neighboring property owner, or someone else. So I will start up in the room with the two gentlemen in the conference room. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Could you each give me your full names and who you're representing here today?
My name is Joe Zimmerman, and I'm a resident in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And my
Great.
name is Michael Boland. I'm a resident in the neighborhood.
That's Bolan, B-O-L-A-N.
B-O-L-A-N.
Okay. Welcome. All right. I have a Danny Gant.
Yes, Danny, and I'm representing the Highmark. I'm a partner.
Gotcha. All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have someone under Jeff's iPad. Sir, if you could unmute.
I'm Jeff Stewart. I represent the Strader Company, Strader Co. And I'm a property owner adjacent to this.
Okay. And is it Stewart with a U or with a W?
EW.
All right. And you said you are an adjacent property owner?
Correct, directly behind Bear Valley.
Okay. Welcome. All right. Steve Johns.
Hi,
Hi,
I'm
Steve.
the Vice President of the East End Area Council.
All right. I have a Rachel Alante.
Yes, I'm a property owner across from Riverside Drive.
Okay. Welcome. Jane Seitz. Jane Seitz, if you could unmute.
I also am a resident, but I participate in the East End Community Garden on Babb Street.
Okay, great. Are you, so is that a community group?
Well, I'm a resident and I also belong to that park garden area.
Okay, great. Welcome, Jane. I see we have a Kurt P. I think that's Kurt Platt. Kurt, if you're with us, you can unmute.
Yeah, Kurt Platt with Platt Architecture. We're the architect on the project.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Platt. So you have a Joe Belante as well. Joe, you can unmute.
Yes, I'm a property owner on Walworth near the project.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mary Beth Wilker.
Yeah, hi, I'm a property owner, Nick Moates' wife and secretary of the East End Area Council.
Gotcha. So a resident in the neighborhood and a member of the East End Council.
Property owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Nick Moates. You could unmute.
Hello, Nick Moates. I'm the subject property owner, and I'm also the president of the 3 East CDC.
Okay, so and you're here in your capacity as the owner of the property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I assume you're not here in your capacity as the president of the East End.
I could be, but Matt Ackerman, who's the treasurer of the CDC, is also here. I can give you some background on some of our work to date if you like.
We'll hold off on that. I'll give you a
during the
moment to do
hearing.
that. Just okay. All right, and then I see we have Emily A. House, who is the zoning administrator for the city of Cincinnati. Welcome, Emily. And Greg Dorr.
Yes, I am the owner of Fulton Yards Coffee House and Spirits on Riverside Drive, and I'm also a neighborhood resident.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then Mr. Ackerman, Matt Ackerman.
Yes,
Mr.
hi.
Ackerman, first off, are you wanting to provide any testimony here today?
I am. So I'm having trouble with my camera on my phone. If I need to log in on my laptop, I can do that.
Yeah, in order to provide testimony, I'm going to ask that you activate your camera. But did I hear right that you're the treasurer of the redevelopment corporation?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. I've got to run through a few administrative things here.
Okay.
So if you'd like to go ahead and try and switch over, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to read through our hearing script, and this will basically just cover the procedure for the hearing, and then we will go ahead and get into it. And I see that there's one person, Jane Seitz. Are you logged in under two different devices by any chance?
I just turned off. I thought that something was wrong with my computer, so I tried my phone, but I'll get rid of that.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, yeah, this will just cover the procedure for the hearing, and then we'll jump right into it. So this is the June 7th, 2023 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the Zoning Hearing Examiner for the City of Cincinnati. I will preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20230067. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and any potential opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. I've received correspondence from, I believe, a gentleman that is with us today that has asked for a postponement of this hearing to allow for more community engagement. So I will listen to and hear from the applicant on that request. Depending on what happens with that request, if we move forward today with the hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. I will then move to the public. So anyone from the public will then have an opportunity to speak after the applicant had presented its case. I will give our zoning department, in this case, I believe it will be Emily A. House. I'll give them an opportunity to provide any testimony in addition to the staff report that was submitted on this proposal. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to an application, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to any opposition that was presented. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. So again, for our purposes here today, I'll just remind the public that you just have one bite at the apple here. So if there are questions, comments, concerns, please use that time that you have to articulate all of those things, because it's rare that I will go back and allow for much back and forth. It really is just an opportunity for you to tell me how you feel about the project and what you'd like to see happen. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at this hearing. That is discretionary. In the event of any technical difficulties, as we've already seen here, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay. Last thing I need to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, doing anything other than just strictly observing this hearing, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if you know that you'd like to say something today, I'd ask that you take yourself off of mute now. I need everyone to answer out loud and to raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. All right. Give me 1 second. Like I said, we're going to start with a request from Mr. Bolin. Now, Mr. Bolin, in your email that you sent earlier this week, or I'm sorry, it may have even been last week, you requested that we postpone this hearing to allow for more time for community engagement. Would you like to say anything else on that request, Mr. Boland?
No, I received the request, as others did, by mail on the 30th of May. And it had a deadline by Monday that you had to have register and say that you wanted to participate. The application, then it took another day to find out what the application was about. And it had 6 zoning codes, and we really weren't able to come to grips with the pros and cons of it. And the neighbors also couldn't do it. So we thought it would be best to postpone it sometime so we could look at what really was requested and what the impact was.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Boland. I will go ahead and before I make any decision on postponement, I will go ahead and hear from the owner and from the applicant. Would you like to respond to the request for postponement in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I would respond. I would ask that Kurt Platt could as well. But this is the final project in our business district. We've done this exact same request 5 times now. So we have the exact same variance and set of variances for both Emma Wine, Highmark, Eli's, Fulton Yards, and now this project. And this is the grand finale project in the strip. So really nothing has changed over these other projects. And if Kurt wants to add to that, he's more than welcome.
Yeah, and I would just say that, I mean, I think it's pretty simple, and along with what Nick had stated. I mean, the primary part of the variance is the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property right of the applicant by owners of other properties in the same district and vicinity. And I think that's going to qualify, not just sort of beyond measure. So I think it's pretty simple. I'm not sure what more time would do. I don't know how it would change anything. And I think there's kind of a history of the local community council voting against every single one of these projects. So I'm not sure how that would play out differently. That's just my take on it.
Gotcha. So, and to be clear, you would like to proceed today and not take any more time to engage with the community on this project. Is that right?
Nick, yeah, I don't see how that would change a whole lot.
I'd like to proceed. Like Kurt mentioned, historically, the community and the East End Area Council has never given us any written support for any of these projects, and I would not anticipate them doing that this time either. So I'm not sure what a delay would cause or do for us, other than we get a formal negative response, most likely.
Okay. All right, Mr. Boland, would you any final words on your request for postponement?
Well, I don't think what was stated is exactly very clear to us, but we're not really opposed to the building, okay, being remodeled, but we're opposed to the impact that it has on the adjacent neighbors. And the zoning codes that are being asked for variances for, there are 6 zoning codes that were variances for, and so we never got notice of this on any other of the properties that is was stated. So we don't know what that was all about.
Yeah. Okay. So just for the record and just point of clarification here, the notification requirements for these hearings are all prescribed in the Cincinnati zoning code. So when we send out these notifications, we do them based on a timing schedule that is prescribed in the code that we have to abide by. And who gets notice and who doesn't get notice is based on the proximity to the subject property. and it's all automated. There's little room for human error because it's all automated, and it pulls addresses automatically from the auditor's website. So if you're within a particular proximity to a subject property, your address gets pulled automatically based on CAGIS data, and you are sent notifications. I did check on our notification procedure for this project. Everything was done according to code and according to our procedures. And so absent some other defect, I am going to deny the request for postponement of this hearing. I understand the frustration with the short amount of time. It's not the first time we've heard that, but it is something that needs to be done at a legislative level if that is going to change. And unfortunately, it's not something that we can change as the administrators of this process. It's something that would have to go through council. I just wanted to provide that in case any of you ever have an opportunity to advocate for those changes and would like to. It's something that would need to be directed at council. So having said that, hopefully we will have an opportunity to really dive into this project today so that everyone has a greater understanding of what the applicant is proposing. Again, I know it's not as much time as you would like, but we are going to have to proceed today. So having said that, I am now going to turn this over for a presentation from the applicant and the owner. I'm pretty liberal, Kurt and Nick, on how you want to orient that presentation. Both of you can talk, one of you can talk. Whatever you think gives me and the rest of the group the best idea of what exactly it is you're proposing for the property and what exactly it is the zoning relief that you're requesting and why you think that zoning relief is appropriate. So with that, I will turn it over to either Kurt or Nick or whoever else you would like to start your presentation as the applicant.
I would say, Kurt, do you want to start and then I'll follow up?
Sure, I'll start. So these are buildings that are at the corner of Strader and Riverside, and to the rear of it is Bab Alley. And these are the two last buildings sort of in the stretch of this commercial district. The corner building is extremely ornate. It's one of the prettiest buildings along Riverside. And the adjacent building is substantial and historic. And so these are the corner building will have 3 apartments on the upper level, and then the ground level will most likely be a restaurant. The smaller building will have some sort of wine bar or something of that nature. They are connected by a deck for outdoor space. Parking is along Bab Alley, which is what has been done on every single project that we've worked on. We worked on Highmark, Emma's, Eli's is similar. We did not work on that one, but it's similar. And Fulton Yard, same thing. And what we have done is we provide as much parking off of Bab Alley as is possible. And in this case, we're doing 9 spaces, which is greater than what we have had available to us earlier on to the west. There's more parking that's coming from the city in a similar design. And that's all part of the 3E CDC stuff that we negotiated with Matt with the city. And so the relief that is asked for is for the parking, which is common to what we've done, which is in line with what we've done all along this. There's a landscape buffer typically between residential and the property, the commercial property. And what we're doing is we shift that to between the parking and the buildings themselves. And so we've put substantial buffer in that location, actually more than we've done in the past. So that is one of the variances that's required. And then it's a conditional use for the outdoor space because it's larger than typical. We're also, I think that kind of covers, yeah, it's let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think there's conditions that are placed on this as far as outdoor entertainment. I think it ends at 10 o'clock. Nick can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And those are, like I said, these are standard to what we have requested in the past. Typically, in the past, it all rests on the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant, which is Nick Modes, which are possessed by owners of other properties in the same district and vicinity. And this is exactly what has been asked for in the past, which has been passed over and over again. And it's all in keeping with that 3E CDC and what they were intending to do. It's a very vibrant part of the Riverside corridor, and it's pretty special. It's in this piece, I would say, in a way, and I don't want to insult Danny or his group, but in any way, because I love the high mark. But this is the anchor. This is one of the most important pieces of property in that corridor. It's very important that this happens in order for those other establishments to thrive long term. So this kind of completes a set, like a set of books. This is a bookend. So I think it's, yeah, go ahead.
Would it be helpful if I shared my screen and
Yeah,
overhead?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, please, please do.
Yeah.
And Nick, you're muted, just so you know.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
I'll pop these up. So this is a exterior rendering of the corner building. Got stuff all over my screen here.
Nick, is there any way to maximize those images? We're seeing them as sort of small thumbnails with a larger menu.
Is that bigger?
No.
No. I'm not sure how I can change that in here. You're just seeing a small thumbnail?
Yeah, we're seeing a menu that says desktop documents, downloads to the left, and then a series of other menus, and then a small image on the very right.
Does that change anything?
Now we're back to no share screen.
Oh, got it. How's that?
That's it. That's what we need right there.
Yeah. So this is the back of the building. So Riverside Drive is over here. If you see my cursor,
we can, yes.
Okay, this grass field would be closest to Eli's Barbecue. This is the smaller building, and then this is the connection point between the two buildings with outdoor deck and patio, and then the larger building here.
Gotcha.
So just to speak to the first floor, so the upstairs will be 4 high-end residential apartments, very similar to what we did above Emma Line. And then the first floor, we're actually working on a letter of intent with a brick oven pizza restaurant that has 5 locations in Cincinnati. This would be their 6th location. And they're solely interested in the larger, bigger building, first floor only. So, you know, it's going to be a brick oven pizza, mean, they'll serve beer and whatnot, but it's not going to be a bar. And then the smaller building, we're truly probably not thinking that's going to be a bar. I think it's going to probably be something complimentary, once again, food wise. So whether it becomes a sandwich shop or maybe a bakery or something like that. I mean, there's a chance it could be a small shotgun bar, but that footprint's about 800 square feet, so it's really not that big. And
How big's the footprint of that smaller building you said?
I think the usable footprint of that first floor is like 800 to 900 square feet. So it's a really small footprint. The bigger building is more like 2,400 or 2,900, isn't it, Kurt?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So that would be taken up by, kitchen, brick oven pizza, seating.
Yeah. What will be on the second story of the smaller building?
So that would be one apartment. And then on the second and third floors of the bigger building, those would be 3 apartments. So a total of 4 residential units and 1 or 2 commercial uses on the first floor.
Got it. Nick, real quick, as I look at this image you have on the screen now, is the yard area that we're seeing at the bottom of the screen, is that actually Eli's, or does that space belong to you?
The green grass here?
Yeah.
That is not part of this project. That is another parcel that I own. That's really just a grass field at this point in time.
Okay. I see as I look at the Google image street view, some picnic tables on that lawn. Is that being utilized by any other business?
Sometimes you see some of the tables migrate out from the Eli's pavilion, or someone will throw down a blanket and sit out there, but it's truly not Eli's seating. And when we put that pavilion in, we were dictated by that variance to only have so many seats, and the seats are supposed to stay in the pavilion. But like I said, occasionally a patron will drag it out.
Got it. So to be clear, you're not asking to include that open lawn area as a part of this project for any eating or drinking.
Correct. Yeah, the project ends at this wall, basically.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you have any other images you want to show us on this?
Maybe. Let me see if I can do that again. Did I stop the screen share again?
You did.
Man. Just give me a quick second.
Sure.
Yeah. Here's kind of another view, like standing in the alley.
You're not sharing right now.
Yeah, I'm just hitting the button.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so this would be like standing in Babb Alley looking toward Riverside Drive, just another view kind of at the back of this buildings.
Okay.
So, once again, this is gonna be like a family pizza outdoor seating atmosphere. This isn't a concert venue or anything like that.
Okay.
So one of the things I just point out is, as we look at this view is, what would be tragic is if that was just all residential and it was not part of this commercial district. So I just think it's really quite brilliant the way this whole thing has been, planned out and established this commercial corridor where there's very special things that are happening along Riverside. It's pretty celebrated throughout the city. Most people know what this is. And to cap it with something like this, which I think is an appropriate touch of commercial at this location. What would be tragic is if you just made that an apartment building. It would be totally and completely inappropriate for what's happened. It would it would shortchange the effort. It would terminate it too early, prematurely, and would not reinforce what has already been done along here. So this is kind of a celebration of what's already been done. So getting approval on this would be really important. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Platt. Mr. Moss, did you want to say anything else or show us any other images?
Yeah, let me look at my notes here. I had a few notes. Yeah, so this project basically is going to be very similar to the Emma Line and the Fulton Yards project, where we do have a commercial use mixed with a residential component above. So, you know, we're seeing an influx of people moving into this area from even downtown, moving out to the suburbs. So, and we're doing a nice mixed use project here. Like I mentioned, we do have we're close to a signed letter of intent with a brick oven pizza restaurant. And then one thing that I am going to put into the LOIs and the leases for both this tenant and any tenant in this property would be employee parking must be off site. So we want to make sure that the limited parking that we have on site is reserved only for the patrons and the residents themselves. So in this case, if you were to look at a Google map, if you look 2 blocks east at the intersection of Delta and Riverside / Kellogg, there's about a 40+ space city parking lot that is never used right at that intersection of in front of the Riverside Academy. So we're going to, as part of the lease for this, and these commercial tenants, they're going to have to park their employees and staff up in that lot and hike it 2 blocks over to come to work. We don't want them parking in the neighborhood and disturbing the residents. We don't want them taking the on-site parking. We don't want them taking the new parking that's coming in on Babb Alley from the city. And speaking of that parking, that is one program that the 3 East CDC spent the last 5 years obtaining funding through the NBDIP program. We obtained $250,000 to install this parking, which is going to stretch from Strader to Setchell and then from Setchell to Winter. And that's going to literally place about 35 spots right behind our business district for both the businesses and the residents. So it's not going to be for business only, it's going to be for residential use as well.
Gotcha. Let me veer off our procedure here just for a minute. Mr. Ackerman, could you unmute? As the representative from, is it 3E CDC?
Yeah, 3E CDC.
Could you talk any more about the planned parking
Sure.
in this area? If
Yeah,
you're familiar.
so it's been a long process. We've been working with the East End Area Council over that 3 to 4 year period, really having numerous discussions and trying to figure out a way to alleviate some of the issue of any parking in residential or in front of people's properties, their homes. So this was the idea, was to say, all right, let's add these 35 or so spots in Babb Alley and then, and help to relieve some of that pressure. And I think it's been a great project with not only the assistance from the city, but with trading some land between Jeff Stewart and another party potentially. But now it's finally coming to a head. And Nick mentioned how we did it through the NBDIP program, which is a great program that the city offers. So we think it's going to be great. And hopefully it starts this fall and will be another kind of link in the chain of making some improvements in that East End business district.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Johns, I'm sure you're you have something to say about this. I was going to ask you to just hold that thought. We'll get to you here in just a minute. But I wanted to go back to Nick and ask him a few more questions before we move on to public comment. Nick, could you talk a little bit more about the proposed fencing and landscaping that's going to exist on the property, where it's going to be located, and what type of fencing and landscaping we're talking about here?
Kurt, Kurt might be more familiar with that. I can probably pull up the print if you want me to do that in the meantime.
Yeah,
Kurt,
if you could pull it up, Nick, that'd be great, the site plan.
Find it here. Somehow I have all the CAD drawings, but not that one. Can you just talk?
Yeah,
Kurt?
yeah. Here, I'll do it.
I mean,
I'll do it.
yeah,
I'll do
and I apologize.
Can you all see the site plan there?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah,
Okay.
usually the application's in that, so was expecting that. So basically, typically you're asked to put, I think it's a 3-foot buffer along the property line, and you can see that the nature of the parking is off of Babb Alley. And so the parking will exist right at the edge of Babb Alley. And where you see the curb of the parking to the bottom, that starts I think it's like an 8-foot buffer. I believe so, maybe a 10-foot buffer. And there's plantings in that, there's trees, there's shrubs, there's a 6-foot cedar fence. And we've done similar on the other properties, but on the other properties, we had less space. We had more space to put this in. So you can see
you're saying there'll be a fence here?
No, just down a foot. Right there. That solid line right there is the fence. So it's right in the middle of the buffer. The buffer is that crosshatched area. Where as deep as the dumpster enclosure on the far right. And so, it's a 10-foot buffer. And so that buffer goes all the way across to the whole length of the property. And there's trees on both sides of the fence. So,
got it. And what kind of fence did you say it was?
It's a solid cedar 6-foot fence.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thanks, Kurt. Nick, if you could unmute again. I thought that I heard someone say earlier that the hours of the outdoor area would be limited, or that there was no intention for them to be past a certain time. Is that right? Can you speak on that?
I'm pretty sure that is dictated by the code, isn't it? Anytime you butt residential zoning within 150 feet. So we have that same requirement for Emma, Highmark, Bolton Yards, Eli's, that I can't remember, is it 10 o'clock? There can be no piped in music anymore, and then no, I think it's 10 p.m. during the week and maybe 12 on the weekends. I can't remember.
Sure.
I
just wanted to confirm that you weren't requesting any extension of those prescribed hours. Okay.
No, we're fine. We've been fine on all these projects, and we continue to be fine abiding by the code.
Okay. Emily, do you know offhand what those hours are?
Yeah, the use is prohibited between midnight and 7 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. all other days.
Got it.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thanks, Emily. And is there any plans for during those hours to have outdoor entertainment of any kind? I see that there is a request for audio-visual equipment or amplified sound. Can you talk more about what exactly that equipment is going to be and whether there'll be any sort of like live music or things like that?
I mean, historically, once again, I won't be the tenant and we don't have the tenant in place yet formally, but on all of these establishments in the strip, probably the most invasive thing I ever see happen is an acoustic guitar type of thing. And then they have speakers up until, with some music in the background for, the outdoor decks until 10 p.m. during the week or midnight, maybe on the weekends. But in general, this whole district this is not like people out clubbing at night. By 10 p.m. during the week, most of these establishments are closing down literally. And even by midnight or 1 a.m. on the weekends, they're closing down. This isn't downtown clubs where you're raving all night. This is, a quiet little suburb community.
Got it. So you wouldn't have any problem if there was a restriction attached to this approval that limited outdoor entertainment to, or live outdoor entertainment to acoustic only?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions I have, unless there's anything else from the applicants or the owners. I'm going to go ahead and move to public comment now. Okay. I'm just going to go off the orientation of my screen, folks. So sort of in the order that I think I checked everyone in. So I'll start with Mr. Gant. Mr. Gant, if you could unmute, is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation here?
Yeah, I joined this meeting in support of not only the project, but the proposed outdoor seating and the parking reduction. I do agree with Kurt and Nick that this particular bookend building is important to the continued success of the rest of the businesses on that strip.
Okay. Mr. Yant, you said you operate the Highmark down the street.
Yes, I'm a partner of the Highmark.
And there is outdoor space there. Correct. Yeah. Have you had issues with complaints or anything else?
We've been there since 2017 and we have not received one noise complaint.
What about parking? Do residents or patrons complain about lack of parking?
Not that I'm aware of. It's never been brought to my attention.
Right. And anything else you'd like to say?
No, sir.
All right. Thanks for being here, Mr. Yant. Appreciate your time, your testimony.
Thank you.
And I'll let everyone know if you once you've given comments, you're under no obligation to stay. Of course, it's a public hearing. Love to have you here to hear everything that's going on, but please don't feel obligated to stay if you don't want to. Okay, I'm going to go to Jeff now. This is Jeff Stewart, an adjacent property owner. Jeff, you'll need to unmute. What would you like to tell us?
I support the project. I think it'd be a great improvement for the area within the blight that exists there. I support the variance, and I'm the closest property owner. It's going to be residential. We have an approved subdivision there. We have to get started with the construction of the single family houses soon. I do, however, support the non-amplified music that you would consider there. I think that would be a good improvement. I think the neighbors would like it also.
Okay.
And that's about it.
Thanks, Mr. Stewart. Thanks for your time. Okay, I'm going to go up to the conference room there. Mr. Zimmerman, is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation here?
Yeah, I'd like to say that they're talking about putting in 9 parking spots. Eli's already take the parking all the way to the alley, all the way to the next street. So they would be losing 9 spots. And plus, in that zoning, if I ain't mistaken, you're not allowed to have bands and amplifiers and live music down there. I've got papers on Highmark and Eli's where they determined that they weren't allowed to have bands and amplifiers. And plus, I think if they sell liquor out of that corner building, they're 500 feet from school zone.
Yeah, so Mr. Zimmerman, you don't think that there's adequate parking, and you think that the potential for noise disturbances is enough where you do not support this project?
Yeah, I don't support it because when I work, I'm retired now. When I work, when I come home from work just with Eli's, I'd leave. I couldn't have a parking spot when I come back. And now they got 4 more businesses in there. We was down here the last time when they put that shelter up. And they told us down here then they would not put no more businesses in till they made sure they had more parking. And they lost parking. And they still put 4 businesses in. So I don't understand how we keep fighting the same thing over and over. And the people that lives here, they're getting burnt big time with the music and the parking.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Zimmerman?
No, that's all.
Okay, thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Mr. Boland.
Yes, my name is Michael Boland. For 15 years, I've owned and remodeled and occupied a home at 251 Strader. And I'm a pending purchaser of a new resilient home at 243 Strader. So I've been drawn to the area for the garden districts for its green spaces and community gardening. I favor the renovation of the former tourist store building along with other neighbors. However, the party yards that exist, that are adjacent to it, need to adhere to zoning laws to protect the quality of life for those living in the existing homes as well as the new homes. The strip of 5 bars along Riverside Drive operate as a mega bar scale, and oversized outdoor party yards, that are annexed into the activities, create real difficulties for the neighborhood to absorb. A motion was unanimously passed Monday by those attending the monthly LeBlanc Neighborhood Council meeting, requested that any changes to the zoning be denied until further discussions resolve what to do with the issues that exist. There's simply not adequate buffer space shield from the surrounding homes from the amplified sound music nightly into the open air oversized party areas, that are annexed by these operations to create large crowds at night with long staying powers. The wood frame construction of the surrounding homes offers little or no defense over such unwanted song. Thank you for the opportunity to present these concerns about living in the Garden District.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boland. Appreciate your time and your testimony here today. Okay, Mr. Steve Johns. Mr. Johns?
Thank you, Mr. Sturkey. I have a 4-page letter that I would like to submit for the record. Will that be allowed as part of these proceedings?
Yes. Have you sent that to anyone in our department yet?
I've not.
Okay, I'll just ask that you, are you going to read it into the record now?
I would not like to read the entire thing, but excerpts of that. Would you like me to read the entire thing?
If you can excerpt or paraphrase, I think that'd be appreciated, and I'll
yes.
add it to the record. If you can send it to me once your testimony is through.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Boland helped me short circuit it a bit. He is correct that the EEAC meeting on June 5th, the members passed a motion that the EEAC requests that the city of Cincinnati deny the applicant's request for zoning relief. The EEAC is not against development. In fact, as Michael was saying, I believe the neighborhood is in favor of the refurbishment and reuse of buildings that are part of this application. I believe that the property rights can be preserved even with denial, because there are other uses that may be more complementary for this particular building, including office, personal services, recreation, and retail sales that have been successful in other parts of the neighborhood and in adjacent Columbia, Tusculum. And those would not require the number of conditional use, special exception, and variance approvals that are part of this application. I believe Michael is also correct in noting that the cumulative impacts of the bar district are starting to wear thin on the neighborhood. They're starting to add up. So when one place went in, when Eli's went in, it was manageable. As we are approaching the 5th one, the cumulative impacts create a problem. I'm going to cite in my letter two specific reasons for denial, particularly of the conditional use for parking. One is that the East End area garden plan was not cited by either staff or the applicant. And that is one thing that the code requires to be cited. And the other is, I believe, the parking calculations that were submitted as the applicant are flawed. In section 1445-13, general standards, public interest of these hearings, part C asks that one of the factors to be considered is the proposed work conforms to comprehensive plan, any applicable urban design or other plan officially adopted by council, and any applicable community plan approved by the city planning commission. Neither the applicant nor staff referred to the city planning commission approved and city council adopted East End Garden District Plan, or EEGDP, which was recommended for approval by city planning commission on October 20th, 2017, and approved by city council by resolution 64, 2017, 11/29/17. There's a few segments of that plan that are pertinent to the discussion today. First, when the commercial, on page 12, excuse me, of the plan, when the commercial district gets busy, street parking is usually available, but oftentimes residents have to walk several blocks, as Mr. Zimmerman was indicating, from their vehicle to their home. As the commercial district becomes more vibrant, there may be a need for additional parking spaces, as well as, my emphasis, dedicated off-street parking spaces near the commercial district to help attract new businesses. It goes on page 14 to state, scenario 4 is the worst case scenario for required parking, as eating and drinking establishments require the most parking of any potential use. Although there are several vacant buildings in the commercial district, there is a potential that future demand for these commercial uses could total 368 spaces. Although there are exceptions written into the current code, a lack of off-street parking could be hindering potential business development in these locations. And I would point out to the existing business owners, Mr. Gant and Mr. Dorr, that the parking spillover from inadequate parking at this particular location could impact their businesses. On to parking calculation. The parking calculation submitted by the applicant is flawed. And Mr. Turkey, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the site plan, we'll see that the smaller building does indicate a bar use, not a bakery, as the applicant stated during this hearing. The applicant's calculation do not include the kitchen and bar area of the proposed eating and drinking establishment, which, if included, would add an additional 1,020 feet of gross floor area for the purpose of determining the required number of parking spaces. The resulting calculation would increase the number of required spaces by 6. If you see in the bottom right of the drawing, it indicates bar. That was part of the submittal for this application.
Right. And so you're saying that the parking calculation did not include the smaller building?
It did not include the area behind the bar or the kitchen.
Gotcha. Okay. So the area behind the bar, meaning?
If you see this in the drawing, the little L shape, so the actual where the bartender would be working.
Here?
Yes.
Okay, it didn't include that area?
That's correct. And the area labeled kitchen.
Gotcha. And
as well as
Emily,
I believe the bathroom.
Gotcha. Emily A. House, can you shed some light on how the zoning department did these calculations and whether the area that I presume is just for employees is calculated into these?
Yeah, I think I can try and look at the plans more closely while the hearing goes on. I would need to do a more detailed review.
Well, can you tell us generally whether those spaces are typically included in the square footage calculations for parking?
And I believe what is excluded is more of storage and maintenance and HVAC areas.
That's correct. I believe it's section 1425-17. Units of measurement, gross floor area.
Okay. Well, Steve, let's well, it sounds like we'll have a chance to come back to that in a minute. Let's go ahead and continue with your comments.
Thank you. This will be another one that Emily probably will need to weigh in In addition, there's no existing use of the site. The buildings have been vacant for some time. Therefore, the 2,000 square foot of gross floor area of existing commercial use should not be exempted as allowed by the code in the CNM district. If that 2,000 is included, an additional 13 spaces are required by the proposal when this exemption is not allowed. Therefore, the request for a numeric variance, that's what I should have cited at the beginning of my remarks, in fact, is 26 spaces rather than the 7 requested by the applicant. The provision of 9 spaces when 35 spaces are required will have adverse impacts on the residents on the nearby streets that rely on-street parking for the use of their properties.
So
There are a couple
again,
other
Mr. Johns,
yes.
just to clarify, based on your calculations, you're saying that the code actually requires them to have how many spaces?
35.
35. Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
And then outside of the parking issue, there's other opportunities to minimize the adverse impacts to residents. The applicant can move the outdoor dining area to the sidewalk on Riverside Drive, which is buffered by traffic by a bike lane and a shoulder. This location would maximize the distance of the outdoor dining area from residents. And by moving the outdoor dining to Riverside Drive sidewalk, there could be the opportunity to expand on-site parking. Clearly, they would have to work with DOTE to get a allowance to use that sidewalk. Also, as Mr. Moats indicated, entering into off-street parking arrangements with adjacent properties and parking at the lot at Delta and Kellogg could help mitigate some of these problems. Thank you.
And Mr. Johns, just to clarify, so you think it would be a better use of the property to have people eating outside along Riverside Drive and have cars parked in the outdoor entertainment area?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Johns. Mr. Johns, if you could send that statement to me so I can include it into the record. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Sturkey.
Thank you for your time and your testimony. Okay, Rachel Belante.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple brief comments as a resident very close to this property. In general, I'm in favor of restoration of these buildings. I do think they're beautiful buildings. The renderings look very nice. The concerns that I have are over the outdoor live entertainment that was planned and communicated, but I would support non-amplified music. And then one thing that really hasn't been discussed is the increased traffic, especially with ride sharing. What we see now is Uber and Lyft drivers stopping in the bike lanes to let people in and out of their cars. Not only does it create a backup of traffic, but people are then trying to go around if they can into the bike lanes, which puts pedestrians at risk. We're seeing this more often. And, I think with increased signage, if there was additional parking, that they've talked about that's near the school, if that parking lot was available, I think you really have to have signage that's going to direct people to that parking lot. So the parking could help. But, in general, I think if we could try to solve the parking, the increase, try to alleviate some increased traffic or have a designated pickup and drop off location and limit the outdoor entertainment to non-amplified music, then I would support it.
So thank you, Ms. Belante. So you're saying if there was better sort of signage and infrastructure around the property that you'd be more likely to support it?
Right, along with the non-amplified music, as a condition for the live entertainment.
Gotcha. Okay. And I think I recognize your name from an email that was submitted. Did you say that there is some adverse sonic impacts on?
Yeah. So as a crow flies, we live almost directly across from Eli's, and we hear the bands. Especially on the weekends, occasionally, not too much. I don't notice it too much on the weekdays. We smell Eli's throughout the day. I mean, there's days where we can't have our windows open because the smell is so strong. You would think
smelling Eli's is a bad thing.
Well, when it's when it's like all day long, Like, do you really?
Yeah,
want
no, I
inside
totally
your
get you.
house Smelling like barbecue?
Totally,
every
sorry,
day?
that was
So, yeah.
bad joke.
No, I mean, I get the joke, but at the same time, when you live right there, it's different.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So,
I get it.
just ask that, think about it as a resident. And yes, I did submit a comment in writing. I wasn't sure I'd be able to speak during the meeting. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, and that does help add some context to your email. So thank you again for your time and your testimony.
Thank you.
Ms. Seitz.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I will tell you, I really appreciate Steve's representation of the original garden plan that the city signed off on in 2018. I use that area as recreation, and the 17 years I've lived here, it is the most community gathering, welcoming place we've ever had. There are people from the far east, west side of East End, participating in the garden. However, it's just plain dangerous and seriously dangerous to try to drive on Babb Alley. First of all, they have trucks delivering things to the businesses. Traffic's going east and west. I have tried to pull into Babb to access the garden or any of those parking places and have just had near misses, not to mention the patrons being just very vulgar and just screaming at us because we're using the alley that really is adjacent to the garden. So it's just robbing a lot of us in the East End of the safe use of what should be park and recreational area. And in the original plan, Babb was to be one way, and there would be designated exits and entering area into the business area. And I too agree those buildings are beautiful and need to be restored. But unless we deal with Babb Alley and how seriously unsafe it is, I think it's not going to be win-win for anyone and all of us who enjoy the garden and the park area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seitz. I'm gonna just briefly here, if you'll indulge me for just a minute, share my screen, just so I understand exactly when we're talking about the garden, if everyone can see this. Is it just this area on the other side of Babb Alley? Does it also include this area?
The whole alley. No, I'm sorry. Take that longer shot. The one previous. That alley extends to, we have several parts to the garden. That's the straighter garden. Behind it's Turpin Farms. So that alley that, let's see if you, your first shot had the alley goes way back and also accesses the straighter gardens. So there's a Sutchell part, Turner Farms, and then a straighter garden area. It's all supposed to be in the original 2018 plan, walkways, pathways that would help visitors to beautifully go through those areas and also walk from off-site parking. We looked at Watson, we looked at the place you referred to off of Delta as well, and Riverside. So those are wonderful big places. I just think until Babb Alley becomes one way with slanted parking, it's just plain unsafe to try to have pedestrians and folks using the garden or any area.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Seitz. All right, Joe Vellante.
Yeah, thank you. I share many of the same concerns that Rachel brought up. We live across as a crow flies from the Eli's. And one of the reasons we did move to the area was because of the promise of these, restaurants, coffee shop, bars. It's a really great, part of town, and we're excited to be part of that. And that's one of the things we really do enjoy about living there. With that, of course, has come the issues that many have brought up. And our main concern, as Ms. Vellante brought up before, is that we can hear the amplified, music from our house. So that's our biggest concern, is that amplified music, coming from the establishments. Secondly, while we're grateful that we do have a garage and don't need to use street parking a lot, the increased traffic around the establishments does impact us. Both of us, we ride bikes, we take walks through the neighborhood. Sometimes we walk by the gardens. And so there is that safety concern, as Ms. Seitz brought up, regarding Babb Alley, as well as the bike lane on Riverside Drive. It's very hard as a person who rides a bike to and from downtown and to have to go by those establishments when people are trying to pull out, pull in, not looking. Some are, have had some drinks, and it can be kind of dangerous for people who live there and people who use the bike path. That said, I do wish that more of the businesses around the area and the East End Community Council would try harder to get the bike path on the Oasis Trail moving forward, so we can move some of those pedestrians and cyclists to a safer place on that railroad corridor. My main concern is that number one, does Emma, Fulton Yards, and all the other establishments have the same variance as is being proposed here? And again, I'd like to reiterate that, we are mainly concerned about the amplified music and the danger to pedestrians and cyclists. So thank you.
Sure, thank you. I don't have the variances for all of the establishments here. I did do Fulton Yards. They did have similar variance requests that were approved. I don't know in terms of square footage whether it's comparable in terms of the outdoor area, and maybe Mr. Dorr can talk more about that in a minute. But I know that Fulton Yards did receive similar zoning relief, particularly in regard to outdoor space within a certain proximity of a residential district line. And so, again, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I think in any decision either way, we won't be able to I won't be able to ignore referencing what has been done in the past. So that will be a part of the official written decision. And like I said, the applicants and the owner can, if they know of anything, they can respond when they have their chance for rebuttal here. And when we get to Mr. Dorr here in just a minute, if he wants to add anything to that, he can. Mary Beth Wilker. Ms. Wilker, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to say I support the project. This is a business district. So while the concept of it being an office building, that would be ideal, but I really think the building itself lends to a restaurant. And I think a pizza place is perfect. It's not a concert hall by any means. And everyone is talking about parking and safety. And I think that's a problem in every community right now. We're a city that's really growing fast, and we're not ready to handle it. So everybody has to do their part. So I encourage anybody here who's in the community and they want to be a part of a committee to join the East End Area Council.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Wilker. All right, gonna go to Greg Dorr, and then I believe I'll give Matt Ackerman an opportunity to say anything after that as part of public comment.
Yes, I am fully supportive of the variance and the project. Having been a resident first in Columbia, Tusculum, and now on Golden Avenue for more than 11 years, we are in our neighborhood. We wanted to open a business. We wanted to bring jobs. What we loved about the East End, as not only is it our home, do we live there, but we wanted to bring what we call sort of the East End living room. We wanted a coffee house where people were going to be able to come in and get their coffee in the morning, work, bring their laptops, and then have it go into not a bar, but a place where we have guests ranging from 30 to 90 years old on any given week. So we really were looking to this space because of the history, because of the community garden, because of the fact that when we first signed our letter of intent, from that very point on, there had been a plan approved by the city for parking, and that still has not come to fruition. So that seems to be maybe perhaps another issue. I have never personally in my 2 years heard any band coming from Eli's. We have acoustic guitar players on Saturday evenings that end at 10 o'clock. So 7 to 10 is our music. We did have one complaint in October directly from the president of the East End Area Council. So he called me on vacation. I took his call while we were in a cruise ship, and it was about our the music that we have on our outside speakers being exceedingly loud one evening. And when we returned, we solved that issue. Our music goes up to 100%. Our standard is we don't let anybody ever turn it on more than 40%. And so that person who was in charge of that is no longer with us. So that is a goal of ours. We want to be inclusive. Building that neighborhood community gathering space was our goal. We're thrilled to be there. We have so many great neighbors. The community gardeners come in every Wednesday. They actually have brought us, fresh basil and rosemary and things of the like, and we're just thrilled to be there. I do understand that parking is an issue, but the traffic in general in front of Riverside Drive, which no one can control, is crazy, if you ask me. I mean, we have people sitting there, and there are motorcycles, flying down that street. So to me, a parking issue is also a driving issue, is on the front side of Riverside Drive. So I do think there's definitely opportunity. But to Nick's point, those buildings, those are a cornerstone. I remember as a kid growing up, Toady Toys, that was a business that was already it had a variance for business. Our history goes back to building ships on those very streets, or in those very buildings. So we love being part of this historic business community, and to be able to take those gorgeous buildings and turn them into something that will really be the hallmark and the cornerstone of that historic business community. All of us on the Fulton Yard side are thrilled and honored to be part of it, and we're also thrilled and honored to be part of the community. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. Appreciate your testimony.
Absolutely.
Mr. Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Shirkey. A couple of comments in terms of the traffic on Riverside Drive. It wasn't too long ago where it was a 4-lane street, and the traffic was much worse. Now that there's parking and there are bike lanes, it has gotten substantially and significantly better. Improvements that can still be made, because I get what Joe is saying and Rachel is saying too. I tend to bike there as well downtown. I tend to probably illegally bike on the sidewalks a little bit more, but I get it, right? And so you want to have it safe there. And, in terms of music as well, I think that has to be respectful of the neighborhoods. I have a rental property that's right near Allen's Cafe, a home that I lived in myself for a while. And so I hear music from Allen's that comes up, and same thing, a lot of these places, we don't have a lot of early 20-year-olds living in these neighborhoods where things and bars stay open late. They do close early. So I think that the use of this building would fall within that. And if there is a pizza place that has music, they would shut it down, and it's hopefully wouldn't be an issue for residents in the area. In terms of it being an anchor spot, it is, again, like everybody said, it's a beautiful building. It's the first building you see as you're heading east towards downtown when you get into that business district. That used to be a thriving business district back in the probably 70s or 80s is kind of when it started to taper off. That's before my time. But I think bringing it back has helped not only the neighboring communities like Columbia Tusculum and the East End further towards downtown, but having that area there also helped with the decision to develop Walworth. And it's a place where people can go, and we're trying to make it a walkable neighborhood. So we know it's not perfect. And we in the 3 East Community Development Corporation, we want to help alleviate any strain that gets put on neighbors, but also continue to try to improve that business district area. One thing that we haven't talked about today, and I experienced this with a different property I own on Walworth, is we did put in some residential parking like the first 10 homes there. So that's an option for some of those neighbors if it continues to be an issue. And then we say, all right, we as business owners, we say, all right, we know that there's parking on Watson, there's parking over by the school, and we find ways to direct people, whether it's signage or apps, and further push people towards using that walkability, because we are going to become more and more dense in these neighborhoods as development continues. So again, I'm in favor of the project, with trying to respect the neighbors who've been there for years and all the new neighbors too. So hopefully we can work together and pull this thing off. The last thing I'll say is, I know with the parking lot on Bab Alley, that is being worked on with DOTE to make sure that it's safer. And we are trying to put some funds towards kind of buffering the parking area with the garden district, so that we add some beautification to that area and not just have cars parked there. So we have some funds set aside for that. And we'll see how it all kind of plays out, but we want to work with the neighborhood and make it better for everybody. So thanks for the time.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. I think that's all we have from public comment. I'm going to go back now to the applicant and the owner, Kurt or Nick. Is there anything that you heard from the public that you would like to respond to?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to the parking issue, and if I've pulled up on my computer all the zoning variances from all the projects that we've worked on, Emma's and Highmark and Fulton Yards along there. These are the exact same variances. These are the exact same conditional uses that we have requested in the past. And the same thing is the interpretation of parking has always been this way. The 2,000 square foot exemption is for an existing building. It's if it was new construction, you don't get that exemption. If you're new putting, if we were doing an infill property, we would not get that 2,000 square foot exemption. And again, if it were going to be interpreted, the zoning code would be interpreted differently in this case and in cases. I mean, we do this all the time. I mean, I would demand that we get that exemption because of because of historic interpretations from the city of Cincinnati. This is how it's interpreted. We do get the 2,000 square foot exemption. Also, areas that are considered storage and mechanical rooms and all that stuff, it's defined in the zoning code, and the way we calculate that. We're really good at it. We do it all the time. And this is the way it's been accepted. This is the way we handle that. That's how we come up with occupant loads. We're very skilled at this. And then the other point that I would make is that always the argument has been, and I lived on Hanman for 3 years. I lived in this neighborhood. I jogged this route almost every day for 3 years, and there is more parking on Riverside Drive than anywhere else in the city of Cincinnati. There is not a parking issue in this district. There might be a entitlement issue, like I shouldn't have to walk 3 blocks to go to a eating establishment. But again, that's been the issue down and over the Rhine, Mount everywhere. And a successful district should have a little bit of discomfort when it comes to parking. That shows success. That's not a problem. We don't want parking structures in this district. That's not going to be helpful. The other point being is this project would be entitled to a 50% reduction in parking, typically just because the city of Cincinnati offers that up pretty freely in past projects to make these things succeed. But if within 600 feet there's public parking available, you automatically get a 50% reduction, and we haven't requested that. We are actually offering more than 50%. There's only 19 that are required, or I think that's what it is. And we're giving you, what is it, 2, 4, 6, 8. We're doing 9, and I think, what is it, 14? I forget, Nick, what that number was, but we're getting over 50% of the required number of parking spaces. I think if we got the 50% reduction, I think it's only 7 spaces. I think we only need 14. And we are within, once they put in that city parking area, that would be considered public parking, and we should get that 50% reduction. There's another the parking lot that Nick is referring to is just outside the 600 feet, and people can park there. The employees are going to park there that by requirements of the lease. You're already enacting, you're forcing employees who would count in the population count, the occupant load, that were these calculations. So I, you know, with all due respect, I would say the interpretation of parking is absolutely incorrect. I put my money on Jim, who's a seasoned architect who has done this over and over and over again. And we have received the variances in the past. And once again, I would just point out that by rights, because other establishments are enjoying these exact same variances and rights, that is where you get rid of, that's how variances are issued and approved. I really believe that they've met that condition. Nick has met that condition with this, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. And Nick, before I give you an opportunity here, I'd like to allow Emily A. House, particularly on the heels of the parking that Kurt was talking about. I'd like to allow her to provide any testimony in addition to the staff report on this.
Yeah, so I did look at the parking in more detail, as much detail as time allowed during the hearing. And Kurt is correct. The 2,000 square foot exemption was correctly applied to this case. The language in 1425-19B is not very clear, but we do read that as existing building. So an existing building with commercial use gets that 2,000 square foot exemption, and applying it to these buildings is consistent with how we apply that 2,000 square foot exemption throughout the city. On the actual calculation of parking, I will say this does get a little bit tricky when we're talking, this phase of the project is white box, right? So we don't have the final details of build out and exactly what will be storage, what will be exempt. And so the calculations shown on the plans are what was used to determine what the variance would be. It does appear there could be some additional space included that they excluded that we would not exclude according to the code. I ran the sort of the quick numbers based on the total gross square footage, which doesn't really exclude any storage or mechanical equipment. And that shows the total parking required under those calculations of the 2,200 square feet for building A, 2,000 for the outdoor area, and 620 square feet for building B, plus the 4 dwelling units. That would give you 23 spaces required total. That would make it a variance of 14 spaces. And I think, I can say that I don't think that would change our analysis of the variance. I think given the site constraints, the use of the building, our recommendation would remain the same. If we calculated on the maximum highest end, which would be that 14 parking space variance.
Got it.
So go ahead.
Emily, I was just going to ask, Kurt mentioned something about an exemption for public parking within 600 feet. Do you have any comments on that?
And there is, it doesn't apply to this project now because there is no existing public parking lot, but if one were established in the future, that exemption would apply.
Okay.
And I can speak if you want me to just kind of generally give an overview as well.
Yeah.
Trey Sheldon wrote the staff report that really clearly articulates our position on the project. We are recommending approval of all the zoning relief that was requested. in terms of the conditional use for the outdoor dining, for its proximity to a residential zoning district, its size, and its provision of entertainment. Our finding is that it is appropriately located, designed, and configured to minimize adverse effects on surrounding properties. The outdoor space is on the western portion of the lot, so moving it further from the existing residential and screening it by a fence at the edge of the outdoor area. In terms of the special exception for the buffer yard and the parking lot landscaping, that really is needed to allow them to provide for parking in the rear of the property and outdoor dining space. Providing the parking in the buffer yard will minimize adverse effects from parking in the surrounding residential neighborhood, and will also provide an additional buffer from the outdoor area to the residential zoning district. If they needed to provide that 15-foot fully landscaped buffer without any parking in it, and then provide the 9 parking spaces with a 3-foot landscape buffer around it, it really wouldn't leave any room on the lot for an outdoor area for the businesses. And then finally, on the parking variances, I think we acknowledge that in this context, there are site constraints with existing historic buildings and their redevelopment, and say that they are really maximizing the number of spaces that they are providing on site, while also balancing that with providing those outdoor dining amenities and resident amenities that are desirable, for a new business in the area. And it is consistent with the relief and the property rights enjoyed by others in the surrounding blocks. And we did confirm with DOTE that there is the broader city plan moving forward to provide that public parking on that alley, and that will be 32 parking spaces. So that's our basic overview of the project. We are recommending approval of all relief.
Okay, thank you, Emily, for your testimony and for your department's work on the staff report. Okay, Nick.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what Kurt said. These are the same variances that we used on all these establishments. The Bab Alley parking is hopefully going to be installed this year. I would love to work closer with DOTE because I feel like I fell on deaf ears with them, but Bab Alley is a one-way alley. And it really needs to be formally, when we do this parking project on Bab Alley, we really need to make it a one-way alley. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I can map it out exactly how I think it should be because I live it every week for the last 15 years. So I'd be happy to meet with or get in touch with whoever we can, if Emily or David or Steve, if you know who to dig into besides Diego, I'd love to sit down with them and try to incorporate that into this project. Other than that, this is the bookend property. This is the gateway. When most people come down Delta by the precinct, they come under the bridge, they turn right, and bam, that is this building on the corner. You're going to see big glass windows on the corner. You're going to see people in there eating pizza. You're going to see people out back. It's going to be a great entryway to the business district, and it's the last building. So I appreciate all your time today and consideration, and I thank you guys.
Okay, Nick, just one more question. Did you ever consider a different use for this building, office or retail, or do you have any sense of whether that'd be economically viable here?
Well, I'm a commercial real estate broker, and the flattest commercial market right now is office. You'd be suicidal to build an office out right now, even if you had a viable tenant. So no, I think it could be, like I said, the smaller building. I don't think it has to be another restaurant or bar. It could be a bakery. It could be something art related. I'm not going to dictate what that is, but it's a small space, but I think it needs to complement everything else that's already down there. And I'm one of the reasons I'm kind of picky and choosy with the pizza concept, because I think it's a great food mix in collaboration with Eli's and Highmark and Fulton. And I don't want to throw a food mix in there that it's going to detract from one of the other establishments. I want it to complement. So.
Okay.
we think about it hard on the backside. This is, we're not just throwing, and this has been a 15-year play. So, you know, we put our first business in, which is our wife's business, Mary Beth's business, 15 years ago. And this was a bombed out bombshell of a suburb. I mean, there was nothing down there. People thought we were crazy for even putting her business there. And we've just been slowly picking away at it. And it's been organic. It hasn't, we haven't forced it. We didn't force Eli's in there. We didn't force Highmark in there. It was very organic and it's really working.
Okay. All
Thanks
right.
again.
Well, we will leave it at that. I want to thank everyone again for their time and their testimony here today. It really does give me a much greater insight and much greater context to hear from so many different people in the community about this project. I'm going to take it all under advisement and spend a little bit more time with all the information that I have before I make a final decision. As I said at the beginning, that typically takes about 2 weeks. I think based on my current queue of cases that's realistic. What I do is as soon as I finish it, I put it into a PDF. I'll email it to everybody who's in the hearing here today. So you all will have a copy of the decision really just moments after it's complete. If you have any questions about the decision or you'd like a status update on the decision or any questions about the process for this hearing, I'm happy to field any of those either before or after. I can't take in any new information. The hearing is now closed, and so I can't have any additional arguments or evidence submitted. The sort of case file is complete in that regard. But any other questions about process or status update on the decision, I'm happy to answer those. And you can email me directly if you have those questions. Okay, well, thank you all again. I hope you all have a wonderful day. We are adjourned.